course.
This
Of course.
is, I have been looking forward to this all week. All
Yes.
week. This is an exciting guest that we've got coming in. And I'm just looking forward to everything that he's going to share with us about his story tonight. You got your weekend review. Everybody set with that?
Yes, indeed.
And I'm
Got
starting,
mine.
right? That's the order.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Victoria,
Yep.
you're going first with part of Miguel's bio, and I
Yes,
picked up the end. Okay,
I've got that.
good. Um, let's see. I
I
think
forgot my cup. Forgot my cup today.
we need a water bottle. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And
No.
we
All right, everybody, here comes the open.
All right.
great,
Thank
Alan.
you, Alan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Alan.
Well, good evening, everybody. You have tuned into Authors Up right here on ALH Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Streaming Inspirational Broadcast Network. And I am here tonight with my co-host, Ruth Griffin,
Hello.
and Victoria Henderson Poole. I don't know, between the Queen wave and the whole captain thing, I don't know what we're up for tonight. But I tell you,
Well, that means you're gonna have to come up with something.
Go with something,
I
right?
will. I will. I'll work on that. That'll
Yeah,
probably be
work
my
on that.
project for next
Oh.
week.
She's got the beauty
Angie
queen
Olive,
thing.
Yes.
blowing kisses. Is that going to be mine? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, good evening, Angie. Good to have you on the line with us tonight. We are really, really, really excited. You know, we're always excited on Sunday nights to bring you new books and to share time with some authors that some you know, some you don't know. So I'm just really, really excited about the author that we have tonight and the book that he has written, and just to have him share his story. This is just going to be an incredible evening. So I'm just so glad that you are with us. Hey there, Linda Cooks. Glad to have you in the house tonight. Good to have you as always. And we're going to get started the way that we usually do, and that's in giving you our week in review. And I'm going to start off tonight. And when I finish, Ruth is going to go, and then Victoria is going to tell you about her week. Did a lot of writing this week.
Oh, good.
Had Ruth assist me with some glitches that I had on recordings that I was trying to get to another station. So thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
That's what I'm here
Digging me
for.
out, man, for
Yes.
digging me out.
Yes.
It's really
I'm not just a host. I'm also the IT person at the
That's
group.
it. That's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
she did. Hey there, Francina. Good to have you on tonight as well. The biggest thing that I did this past week is that I gave blood.
Wow. Okay.
And I have not
Good
given
for
blood
you.
for a long time. And I was really excited to do it. It took a little longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. My fear was that I was going to wait and then be told for some reason that I could not give. So
okay.
I was real happy that I was able to give, and then found out that every donor, we were thinking every donor would save a life, but they actually told us that every donor saves 3 lives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anybody out there who's wondering about it, thinking about it, hasn't
Wow.
had a chance to do it, I encourage you.
Good
I
for
really
you.
encourage you to contact the Red Cross and give blood if you can. Life saving, life saving.
How did you feel? How did you feel afterwards?
I felt good. I mean,
Oh,
I
good.
felt
Okay.
fine. I was a little tired, but I can't blame that on the blood drive.
Blood drive.
I was sleepy, so
I actually know you can because you're losing a pint of blood, so you're losing
Okay.
energy. So you
Yeah.
know
Mhm.
what? All the tiredness you're feeling is just a side effect of you
So from
saving
there.
lives.
Okay, well, good
Think
for
So
you, though. Good for you.
yeah, absolutely.
I was glad to do it. Glad to do it.
hmm
Ruth, what about you?
So I had to think about it because my brain just stopped working. You know, it's like when you take a test and they ask you stuff that you know, and then you're like, So, um, I don't remember what my week was, but I did an interview this morning. It's going to air in November. I actually have
Good
two more
deal. Yeah.
interviews this coming week, so I'm kind of excited to be sharing, my book and the message and everything. So I'll keep you guys abreast on when those interviews are gonna air, and
Good.
I'm looking forward to doing more.
Good
I'm
deal.
happy to be sharing it. So
Yes.
Good.
and I'm happy
That's
to be
great.
letting you guys know. So
That's
All
yeah,
great.
right.
that was my day. When I remember my week, I'll let you guys know.
Okay.
So
Well, all righty then.
Look
yeah,
at
so
you,
yeah, well, I mean, I gave blood, so I remember Saturday, but
Okay.
before
So that was.
that,
She
I'm
was
so
out
yeah,
there.
grateful.
thank you. Yeah,
I'm
so
so grateful you guys did that because I can't because I have the sickle cell trait.
oh,
So I'm
Uh,
not able to give blood. But and when I had my youngest child, I needed blood.
mm-hmm.
I found I was very anemic and I lost a lot of blood during the
Oh,
C-section, and I needed 3 bags of blood. So
oh,
yeah, it was touch and go. So I just my hats off to you because it does save lives, and I always
mhm.
wanted to do it, but I can't. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Yeah, Angie was saying that she's not able to give either.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But
Right.
I was glad I had made up my mind that whatever the outcome, I was going to make the effort.
yeah.
Well, yeah, good. Good
So
deal.
I know what was up. So that's good. That's good. So Victoria, you gonna tell us a little bit about our
Just a little bit because I want to get to our guest. But I had actually a podcast interview that aired this past week with
Awesome.
with Leah Fournet and her podcast called Hey Queen Thrive, and we talked about my author journey, and it's been 2 years since my book has been out, so that was really great. And then we talked about and things I have coming up, and also we talked about Authors Up, so I gave a plug in for Authors Up, and it was really good. So if you can listen to it, go back, and it's out there in any podcast platforms on Hey Queen Thrive. I thought it was a really good interview.
great.
Awesome.
That was it.
Awesome.
And I wanted to say one thing about our show from last week. How did I forget that I love Iyanla Van Zant's books? How did I forget that?
I
I
don't know.
have almost every book she ever written. But I said I didn't
I
talk about Iyanla at all last week. But I love all her books. I have them all.
see. Look, and going by Andrea's standard of, the most books on your bookshelf by a certain author, you're not really a fan if you forgot.
I know, right?
No, I'm just playing. But yeah, that she qualifies.
I forgot for the last week's show and I had to plug her because that's my girl. I had every book, and in the meantime, I was saying in the meantime everything. But anyway,
Mhm.
we have a wonderful guest with us tonight, and so
Yes.
we're going to stop talking. So we're going to get to his bio. All right, Miguel Sancho is an Emmy-winning journalist, television producer, and an executive producer of non-scripted television documentaries and series, currently showrunning and developing projects with Six West Productions. His most recent project, The Proof is Out There, premiered on the History channel in January 2021. Prior to his work at A&E Networks, Miguel accumulated more than 2 decades of experience producing national television broadcasts, most recently as senior producer for the ABC News program 2020. He has conceived and managed the production of hundreds of primetime broadcasts, ranging from long term documentary projects to live breaking news specials. With a background in investigative reporting, he oversaw many of the most legally sensitive projects the network aired during his tenure there. He and his teams have won many of the industry's top journalism awards, including a 2017 Emmy for an hour-long documentary special on the Las Vegas massacre. During his years in the field, he's covered stories all across the US and abroad, including Latin America, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East.
With all of these accomplishments under his belt, Miguel also enjoys playing chess and various musical instruments, including piano, bass, and drums. He currently lives in the New York area with his wife, Felicia Morton, and their two children, Lydia and Sebastian. His first book is titled More Than You Can Handle: A Rare Disease, a family in crisis, and the cutting-edge medicine that cured the incurable. The book chronicles the lives, deaths, and rebirths of patients and staff at Duke University Hospital Pediatric Bone Marrow Transplant Unit. And that's the book he's going to be talking about tonight, his first book. So I tell you what, we are going to take a short break right here. And when we return, you are going to meet and greet our guest for the evening, Miguel Sancho. There you are. There you are.
Howdy. This is my greeting. Raise the roof.
That's it. Welcome.
All right.
I'm so thrilled to have you to be on. Thank you. What a wonderful introduction.
Great. Glad to have you, Miguel.
Yes, we are so happy that you're joining us. We want to just jump in and talk about your book. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So hello and hi to everybody in the audience. A little bit about the book. Sure. So I, as you mentioned in your very generous intro, I'm trained as a journalist, television journalist. I worked in TV news for decades. And then what happened was after my son was born in 2012, his name is Sebastian, and he's a wonderful little baby boy. He started getting this series of very unexplained infections that required hospitalizations and some minor surgeries, which were very scary for us. And after about 5 months, my wife, Felicia, insisted we go to an immunologist who ran a very special, very rare test for a rare disease. And it turned out he had this rare disease.
Wow.
And ever since then, until he was cured about 6 years later, we lived in this whole other world of the rare disease community, the parents with sick kids, people going through both living with the disease, trying to manage it and trying to cure it. And in the course of that ordeal, on that process, I thought to myself, this is a very intense experience. And it feels like the journalist part of me feels like it's a really compelling story that I just happen to be in. Mm-hmm. So is there a possibility at some point that this could become a book? And, medical ordeals are never pleasant. I don't recommend them for anybody. But one nice thing about writing them is that there's all these records, right? They keep meticulous records of what happened when and what the results were. And so in addition to kind of some of the own writing I'd done at the time, some of the writing that Felicia had done at the time, there was this treasure trove of medical research I could rely on to medical records, I should say, to build out the book. So at some point, I started writing what was a proposal. I will be honest with you, there were times when I was completely ambivalent about the whole project because, the book is an attempt to, kind of focus all my journalistic powers of criticism and denunciation, not on some politician or some corrupt company, but frankly on myself and some of the imperfections and shortcomings that characterize some of my behavior during this 6 years. But ultimately, I said, this is a story I kind of have to write. I will feel like incomplete or I'll feel like a quitter if I don't push it through. I'm sure you guys have had that feeling too. And I just
Definitely.
went ahead and did it. I didn't know how well it was going to be received or how the people were going to react to what I was portraying in the book. But at a certain point, you ultimately, there's always 1,000 reasons not to do something, right? And there's ultimately just one reason to do something. That's because you have to do it. And ultimately, that's how I kind of felt about this writing project, that I had to do it. And fortunately, I was able to get it done, and it came out earlier this year, and it's been very well received. It's been a wonderful journey, and it's something that kind of made this year different from other years, right? Having a book come out. And so I guess one of my messages to anybody who's listening is, if you think there's a book in you, please, by all means, write it. You'll find it extraordinarily worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Miguel, how long did it actually take you to write the book?
I wrote the book. I started writing the book in like January of 2019. I have to say, I had a wonderful publisher and editor, Caroline Sutton, who's at Avery Books, which is an imprint of Penguin that does a lot of medical stuff. And she gave me wonderful kind of how-tos along the way, and also wonderful feedback about things that weren't working. And so I started in like January of 2019. I submitted the first draft in, I want to say around Thanksgiving of 2019. My editor, Caroline, wrote back with like 3 or 4 pages of notes and edits, some of which were easy to execute, some of which were, more significant, more severe. And so I kind of spent the next few months trying to make that work. And I submitted the next draft February of 2020, just months before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And that was it. And yeah, it was really just a matter of, in terms of the process, a matter of having a certain degree of discipline, of saying, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm writing, and I'm not going to get up until I get whatever 1,000 words done today. And
How'd that work?
I want to say it worked great, because I was given some very good advice, and it's very simple advice to follow. I was given very good advice by a friend of mine who's also written a book, and he said, it's a 2-step process. The first step is write a crappy book. Just sit down.
That's not hard.
Machete your way from the beginning to the middle to the end, and don't care about the fact that you're on the same dance floor as Toni Morrison, and you're on the same dance floor as William Shakespeare. Don't let that kind of blinking cursor on the blank screen freak you out. Just push to the end.
Book.
That's step 1. And then you say, okay, I've written a crappy book. And then go back and turn the crappy book into a good book.
We're laughing. Tell them why, Ruth.
That is my favorite. That is something I quote often. Is I can't think of his name right now, but he said the first draft of any book is garbage. You get the book out of the editing process. So we're always encouraging our listeners. You know what? Just write. Whatever comes out, you can't edit a blank page. So
all right.
Yeah, I want to say it was Walter Mosley or some other great writer said, if you crank out whatever X number of words on Monday, regardless of how good or bad they are, they will make the words you write on Tuesday better, because they will inform the process and your ideas. It's like, how like if you leave a crossword puzzle because you can't figure out some clues and then come back to it 24 hours later.
Yes.
Those clues will just kind of come to you.
Yep.
It's at least for me, listen to me, I'm talking like I've written 10 books. I've written
Yeah.
one book.
You're an
But
expert now.
that's how it was for me.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you have a
Sure.
background in journalism and television production. So, how did that differ? I mean, you spoke about, your journalistic background um, affecting the way you started writing. Is that
Mhm.
how it finished? Did you have to change your process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it helped in one respect and it didn't help in another respect. And the answer, I would say, is this: it helps because if you're a television journalist, you don't have a lot of time, right? Your product is always really compressed and it has to be, it has to move quickly. It can't slow down. People are always have that clicker in your hand. So, and frankly, I'm not proud to say this, but I'm a guy who doesn't finish a certain percentage of the books I write, right? Books I read, excuse me.
Right.
Right. If I start a book and I'm not really digging it by page 75 or 80, I'm like, I'm sorry, you had your chance and you blew it, right?
Can't do it.
We're not going out on a second date here. So I will often drop that book and pick up another book. So I very much think it's the responsibility of the author to make the reading experience pleasurable enough that the audience wants to turn the page, right? Reading
Yeah,
shouldn't be
absolutely.
like eating a bowl of broccoli, although I do like broccoli. It shouldn't be like, climbing a mountain. I like climbing mountains, but it shouldn't be hard work necessarily, right? I mean, most of these books are not like being assigned for, credit in a class. It's something people are doing because they choose to do that with their free time. And so I was always conscious, writing the book, like the TV producer has to be, like somebody, you're speaking to somebody with a clicker in your hand. In the same way, writing and reading a book, you have to pay attention to people's what they can do with their time, right? The next best thing they could be doing, which is almost always like, looking on their phone. The other thing is, it helped me kind of focus on the fact that just because a sentence begins with the word I doesn't mean it's interesting to anybody else, right? Just because something happened to you and you thought it was interesting doesn't necessarily mean everybody else is going to think this is interesting, right? So I was always very conscientious of that. The thing that it didn't help with is that in the first draft of the book that I wrote, I kind of wrote it like a TV script, like a TV documentary.
Okay.
I would write a given, say, event happened or whatever, a moment happened. I would describe it in the prose, and then I would quote people I'd interviewed afterwards, talking and commenting on the thing.
Okay.
And that works well in a TV documentary, right? You talk about whatever, the morning of 9/11, and you describe what happens, and then you interview a fireman who tells you what he was doing at the time. But in the context of a book, it actually kind of strips away the immediacy and the intimacy of being in a scene. So one of the things my editor said is you got to go back and you've got to create actual scenes where people are talking to each other, and do your best to kind of remember what people said and approximate the dialogue and check with them to make sure that they're not being misrepresented in some way.
Right.
But you've got to kind of stick with the active present.
Absolutely.
So that was an adjustment for me.
Okay. Well, I think you did a good job. So making
Definitely.
the change. So I have to say, I was struck by your story, especially the humor in your retelling. I want to read a small excerpt. This was, I think, my favorite part. The most common reality is that rare diseases frequently rip families apart. Diseases take toll on your family. Divorce, substance abuse, depression, and bankruptcy are just a few horsemen riding in the slipstream of an apocalyptic diagnosis, and only a fraction of parents have the outstanding character and good fortune to avoid them all. I was not among them. To the contrary, in the face of the biggest crisis of my life, I managed to derail my career, put my marriage on life support, get my family evicted and banned for life from the local Ronald McDonald House, and ruin a perfectly planned Make-A-Wish trip, to list a few of my greatest hits. I think that says a lot about your book, and I'm gonna let Victoria take it in a second, but I want to ask, obviously going through something like that really changes you. So can you say that you are a totally different person? Are you a better person? How did that experience change you?
Well, for one thing, it was extraordinarily humbling.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
you know, had I was more than blessed for the first 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
I was darn lucky. I hadn't had any major hardship. Um, you know, my grandparents had died, but they died relatively old. I mean, in a
Yeah.
natural way. I've been blessed with, you know, wonderful, caring parents who invested a lot in my education. I've been given, you know, first, second, and third chances by, um, you know, my teachers and my employers and everybody who knew me. So when this hit, you know, this diagnosis hit, I was not prepared. I didn't have,
Right.
you know, some major kind of life experience that had strengthened me and built me up to go through this. I kind of assumed that because the first 40 years of my life had been relatively smooth sailing, the next 40 years would too, as
Right.
important as that was.
Mhm.
So, you know, obviously, as you in the passage you just read indicates, um, this experience was indeed more than I could handle in a lot of ways.
Right.
And in certain regards, I made a bad situation worse because I didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And ultimately, I think, in addition to the value, the precious value of being humbled, um, and being kind of educated about what life is really like, I was able to acquire at least the basics, the beginnings of the tools, to be able to deal with some of life's bigger tests, and also to be able to empathize with other people who are
Mhm.
Right.
going through other things, which basically is almost everybody deals with something
Right.
like this at some point.
Hmm.
So, you know, that's the crux of it. And it did involve, it didn't just happen, right? I
Right.
mean, the one of the, you know, kind of ongoing narratives in the book is how, you know, unlike other families who kind of magically or blessedly kind of tap into an infinite reservoir of kindness or patience or
Right.
um, understanding or wisdom or fortitude. Um, you know, for me, it was rather crippling, and there was a number of things. You know, my life was teetering on the edge of real crisis and real disaster, and I had to kind of actively search out for and actively seek methods, tools, modalities of self improvement, if you will, um, to be adequate, you know, not to be a hero, but just to
Right.
be, you know, a good enough father,
Right.
husband, um, a man to get through this whole thing.
Hmm. I
Wow.
know that Victoria has some things that she wants to uh, talk to
I'm
you about.
fine. I'm fine. Go ahead.
No, you got a burning question. We want to
We
hear that.
That's right. We all of us. Well, we were all just very excited to have the opportunity to have you tell your story
Mhm.
in your own words.
Exactly.
Particularly wanting you to share. You talked about practical lessons that you learned the hard way,
Yeah.
and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that as you talk about your story. You know, the diagnosis, how you really dealt with all of this. But there was one thing that all of us wanted to know,
Come on.
and that is how do you get banned from the Ronald McDonald House?
They such nice people. What happened?
What happened at the Ronald McDonald House with everything else that you have going on and all the things you have to adjust to? Tell us what happened.
All right, well, let me tell you how I got there first. It's one of those stories that you say when it's happening that you'll be able to laugh about it years later, and
Right.
it's years later, and everybody else is laughing about it. I'm not sure I'm able to laugh about it myself yet, but I encourage everybody else to. Um, yeah. So what happened was we got this diagnosis, okay, and
Mhm.
my son had this very rare, very lethal immune deficiency.
Mhm.
And the choice is you could either live with it and try to manage it with daily medications and environmental restrictions, knowing that he may well come down with an infection that could end his life.
Mhm.
Or you can essentially roll the dice with the one known curative treatment that's out there, which is a bone marrow transplant, or what's officially known as a hematopoietic stem cell transplant. But basically, what it is an immune system transplant.
Mm.
You go into a hospital. In this case, for us, it was Duke University Hospital in North Carolina.
Mhm.
They, after determining that you're healthy enough to go through this procedure, proceed to annihilate your existing immune system with chemotherapy. They infuse you with cells from a donor that has been deemed a match,
Mhm.
and hopefully that engrafts, and then they basically grow a new immune system from scratch. It's rather remarkable.
Wow.
It's miraculous
Wow.
they can do this,
Mhm.
and part of the book is about all the breakthrough medical science that makes that possible. So we moved down to North Carolina for this to happen, and while and they tell you it's going to be about a year from beginning and the end of this procedure. It's going to give yourself a year. So we had to deal with housing and schools for our daughter and such. And one of the things that a lot of people do is stay at the Ronald McDonald House. Now, let me say, as I do in the book, and it's not hard for me to say, Ronald McDonald House is a great philanthropy that does
Yes.
wonderful work for families in the situation that we're in. This is what happened. Now now this is what actually happened. We showed up at the Ronald McDonald House, and they said, "Of course, we'll take you. Come on in." And we showed up late. My son arrived at Duke. He was already sick. He'd come down with an infection the week we were supposed to get down there. We were worried that he wasn't going to make it. So I kind of absent-mindedly ask you to sign when you come in. And one of the things that they make you agree to is no alcohol or drugs. And whatever. I didn't plan to party when I was down there or get high, or it wasn't that kind of wasn't that kind of party. So whatever, that's not a big deal. Then in the course of that week, I had gone and seen my one friend who I knew in the Raleigh-Durham area, and he'd given me, just as a gesture, a bottle of bourbon, because he knows I drink bourbon, when I drink.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, thanks. I mean, I wasn't going to have it that week. In fact, I had a fever that week. I got the flu. It was bad.
Oh.
So, but I brought to accept the gift. I took it and I brought it back to the Ronald McDonald.
Oh, mercy.
And what happened was housekeeping went in there while I wasn't in there, and they saw the bottle, and then they reported it right away. And one thing about the Ronald McDonald House that I can tell you, zero tolerance does indeed mean zero tolerance.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
we got evicted. But and I can it happened 5 years ago now, but I can still hear my wife on the phone telling me that news. I was out of the building when it happened.
Wow.
So that was not one of my prouder moments. The good news is that we were able to find housing. There are other housing options for families going through transplant
Good.
there.
Mhm.
And so even though it was extraordinarily embarrassing and humiliating and an abject failure on my part, it worked out okay. We were able to get an apartment, and again, there's a wonderful other charity that actually provides apartments for
Wow.
families in that situation. So
I could see if the bottle was open, but oh my goodness.
yeah, they could have. I mean, it wasn't gift wrapped or anything, but there's a lesson for folks. Don't bring any.
Don't go to the Ronald McDonald House.
Don't even bring rubbing
alcohol.
alcohol into your.
I said rubbing alcohol.
Yeah. Leave the
It
Robitussin at home.
definitely gives a new meaning to zero tolerance.
Tolerance. Right.
Yeah. But I do want to say that's a wonderful charity.
Oh, yeah.
I've given money to them. I donated a little bit of the proceeds from the book to them, and I wish them all the best. In fact, I got a very nice.
Oh, that's nice of you.
I got a nice message from the guy who runs that particular Ronald McDonald House, and we're now friends on either Facebook or LinkedIn, and
Look at you. My comment was that the book actually really touched me. I found myself having to get up a couple times because when my oldest daughter was 3 months old, she was diagnosed with asthma. Now that's nowhere near, the rare disease that your son had, but it was
It
really,
kills
really
people. I mean,
scary.
it's serious. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
does. Seat with me, and I watched that child cough until like her tongue was coming out her mouth, and she's 3 months old, and it's really scary. And then my third child was diagnosed with epilepsy, and so some of the things that you wrote really, really touched my heart. And I said, wow, I hadn't really thought about it, but some of the things that you say really captured how I felt. The complete helplessness as you
Mhm.
watch your child go through these procedures and being stuck. And it was just, I'm gonna tell you, listeners and viewers, you got to get the book. You got to get the book because he tells his story, and you had me laughing at the same time, crying because you tell the story in such a remarkable way. And I don't even think I have a lot of deep questions, but again, we wanted to hear you talk about how was it when you got that first diagnosis after going
Yes.
through what you had gone through before you got the diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I hope your kids are okay.
They are.
And
They doing okay.
and
Thank
you're
you.
absolutely right, Victoria. I mean, you can read every parenting book in the world.
Mhm.
None of them will tell you how to watch your child suffer.
Right.
Um, and you're especially if it's a very young newborn. You can't get a more innocent person, right? A more
Right.
beautiful and innocent thing who just and the unfairness of it,
Mhm.
Right.
right? Just
Right.
is deeply, deeply infuriating. And anger
Right.
was one of the main things. My own anger is one of the main things I had to deal with.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the moment of diagnosis, I would say this. On the one hand, it was a relief
Yes.
because we had spent, as I mentioned, months dealing with basically this medical mystery. And, it's one thing, like I said, to see your kid suffer. Another level is being in a room with a dozen specialists of various sorts who's saying, "Oh, we don't know what's going on."
Mm.
And that's when you find yourself in a whole other level of what we kind of called hospital world, right? You're not
Right.
just in this kind of powerless, confusing situation. You're, panicking, right? Every medical issue I'd ever dealt with, even if it was something painful like a broken bone, there was an answer, right? This is what happened. This is what you have to do to get better. That's how it's going to get fixed. When you're in this kind of, like I said, mystery world, it is terrifying. So when we got the
Right.
diagnosis, on the one hand, I was like, okay, now we know what makes sense.
Right.
The flip side of it is the
Yeah.
way forward was as scary and as risky and as potentially life threatening as the disease itself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The bone marrow transplant is one of the most arduous and potentially risky procedures you can have, even in the world of 21st century medicine. So I liken it to, in the book, I talk about a story I did um, when I was working for ABC News about cruise ships, and the story about this guy who fell off the Lido deck of a Royal
Mhm.
Caribbean cruise ship and found himself, after being knocked unconscious, like floating in the Gulf of Mexico as he
Mm.
wanted. You're in a new environment where you have no bearings or no idea how to move forward. And the one thing you know is that the life you thought you were going to have, the experience that you thought you were going to have, is leaving you behind.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Right.
it's not going to be, there's no kind of getting back on track anytime soon.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know I tell you, it's something. Like I said, I'm not much good right here because I know part of what that feels like. Um, what would you tell our listeners and our viewers about your journey? That what would you just like to share with everyone else about? Because I know during the book you met other parents like yourself.
Yeah.
And you became friends. And what would you tell parents today who are struggling, with illnesses in their children?
Well, the first thing is, to do whatever it takes to get whatever support you need to be, again, at least adequate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like that little passage that Ruth read, we have this myth that parents somehow just automatically rise to the occasion.
Right.
That they somehow become saints overnight when they're dealt with this. And the fact of the matter is, some do. Believe me, I saw them. There are plenty of parents who handle this kind of thing better than I did. So they're out there, but not everybody. And I saw plenty of that up close. The plenty of other parents that we met ended up getting divorced because of this.
Wow.
People, end up getting, there were people we met who were dealing with like substance abuse issues that had been exacerbated because of this.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously kicks a hole in people's careers and finances and the whole thing. So the point is, whatever it takes, do what you need to do. If that means going to church, which I approve of, or going to a therapist, or going to couples counseling,
Yes.
or going to the gym, or taking medications, or meditating, and I've done all of the above, by the way. Do it. And the other thing is, I think sometimes people feel like they have to stick with one kind of modality of self-help.
Right.
And if they mix and match, somehow it's like cheating on their girlfriend. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to try whatever kind of combination of things that I need that's working for me right now. And if I need to change up because I think, something could do better, or because I'm just bored and, I want to change up to try something new, do that as well. But don't do nothing. I spent the first couple of years of this, frankly, adopting a kind of Hollywood understanding of what masculinity was and what being strong was.
Yes.
And I tried to kind of drown my sorrows in either stoicism or workaholism. And it doesn't work for the long term, right? That it might work for a situation that's going to last 2 weeks, but if it's a situation that could potentially last, a lifetime, I don't recommend those particular approaches. So that's it. But also, there's plenty of room and opportunities for hope and for gratitude.
Yeah.
And frankly, I would say one of the things I try to convey in the book is that suffering can be put to a higher purpose. Suffering can have meaning. Suffering can, really enrich one's life experiences, as crazy as that sounds, because it does provide gifts such as proper perspective and appreciation of
Exactly.
and the little thing.
Not crazy at all. Please tell us. I know we're about to wrap up, but please tell us, how is Sebastian today?
Yeah. I am happy to report that he just turned 9. His transplant was a thundering success.
Yes.
It took a long, long time, but he's out now, playing on the beach. And he can do, all the memories of having to take medicines every day, of getting poked, of having operations, of needing to stay away from other kids.
Wow.
If they were at all sick, all that's in the past and kind of actually fading from his memory to a certain degree.
Awesome.
So we are so grateful. And I have to say, the book details kind of our ordeal, but we had it very, very easy. We were very fortunate compared to a lot of the other families who've dealt with similar things. In fact, the book is dedicated to everybody who's had it tougher, because we know that whatever we went through, given our outcome, we really are very fortunate and blessed. And that has a lot to do, I can't say this enough, with the amazing medical science and medical research taking place that is a true source of optimism. And I can't recommend people enough, if you're reading science books, which I started doing, is in and of itself just a very inspiring thing to do, even if it's not like a science book about some problem that you're having right now. It's wonderful to see, kind of the species advancing and working together to solve problems. I mean, I know there's lots to say about how the COVID crisis has been handled, but the fact of the matter is, folks, we as a species came up with a very, very effective vaccine within 9 months.
Yep.
using
How
something
about
called
that?
messenger
How
RNA. I
about
mean,
that?
that is
Right.
astounding.
It
Yes.
is.
And it's not something we should just take for granted.
No.
You are correct. Please tell our listeners and viewers where they can get this book because I'm telling you guys, you're going to enjoy it. You really are.
Well, thank you for saying that. And again, I just want to tell everybody that I did actually write the book with the audience in mind, not just, it wasn't just something that, an exercise, and it wasn't like doing sit-ups. It was like something
Not at all. Not at
it was
all.
for the people,
It
it's supposed to
drew me
provide
in.
a good reading experience in a world where there's lots of books out there. I know that.
Mhm.
Where can we find yours?
You can find, Amazon, of course, Amazon.com. But it's not written in stone that Amazon needs to make every dollar out there.
I know, right?
So you can find Barnes and Noble, local bookstores. Many are carrying it as it is, but you can have them order it. Essentially, everywhere that fine books are sold.
All
Yeah.
right. And how could they get in touch with you? Your
Well,
social media?
yeah, social media. You know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm not supposed to say this, but I find that basically Twitter has become pretty much just a platform for expressing hatred and disregard and contempt for other
It's
people and their
a
opinions.
cesspool.
So, yeah, that's a good
Mhm.
word, cesspool. I need to use it
Yeah.
more often. But so I haven't been tweeting as much as I did at one point, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. You can
Okay.
tweet me at MASancho3. But if you just Google Miguel Sancho, you'll stumble across. There aren't as many Miguel Sanchos as you might otherwise. I believe there's a Spanish supermodel named Miguel Sancho.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He has, and if you want to confuse me with him, you can go right ahead.
Go right ahead, right?
I might have to go
I
look
also have
that up.
I do have a web page, which
Okay.
is just miguelsancho.net.
Okay.
Not com, because I think the model took that one, but miguelsancho.net. And you can learn more than you'd ever want to know about me and my family and my career. And
Awesome.
feel free to stalk me. I could use, I'm
Well, I
lonely and
know at least
isolated.
3 of us on this broadcast are going to stalk you.
Yeah. Stalkers, time wasters and stalkers welcome anytime.
All right.
Miguel, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for taking your time to be with us tonight and to share something that sheds some light on some things that are really important for us to remember and important for us to know. We don't know from day to day what's going to happen or who it's going to happen to or how we are going to handle it. And it's good to know that there is a way to get through. And there's no better way of finding that out than from someone who's been through that journey. So thank you again. Thank you so much. We do appreciate you being with us tonight. And I don't know, ladies, you have any?
Yes, there you go.
Ruth, do you have any closing comments for tonight?
No, Miguel, I just wanted to thank you again for coming on our show, and we wanted to let our audience know if you know someone who's an author or you want to contact us with any comments or anything, you can email us at authorsup@gmail.com.
Okay.
All right. You guys are great. And thank you to everybody watching. And like I said, my biggest message is the Authors Up Show. If you've got a book in you, crank it out.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Get the
Well,
book.
listeners, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you have enjoyed the program as much as we have in bringing it to you. We are here every Sunday night at 7 p.m. So, put us on your calendar, put us on whatever you need to put us on so that you will remember to join us next week. We have another exciting show for you. So thank you again. Thank you, Miguel. And that is it for us for tonight. God bless everybody.
Good night,
Good
Bronx
night.
girls. Good night, Miguel.
Good night. Thank you again.